Hi everyone, it's Sonia here. I just got back from a weekend in Mont Tremblant. I really needed a break. I'm going to tell you all about it. I'm going to post videos. But while I was there, I saw a lot of news on the TV in the hotel room. I don't have cable at home, so on a day-to-day basis, I don't get exposed to the constant stream of news that goes on all day long with a lot of stories being repeated. So while I was there, I couldn't help notice they were putting a lot of attention on this one particular story. Here it's on Global News entitled, "Michigan Woman Declared Dead, Found to be Alive by Funeral Home Employees." So it's a 20-year-old woman who, she seems to have some kind of a disability, and she's not breathing at home. She's had a heart attack or something. So the mom calls the paramedics. The ambulance comes along, tries to revive her, declares her dead. And they confirm this with the hospital. So everybody's like, yeah, I'm sorry, your girl is deceased. They release the body back to the family, who then brings it to this funeral home here, James H. Cole Home for Funerals. The girl is in the funeral home, and the funeral home people realize she's not dead, she's breathing. So it turns out actually she's alive. But she had been dead for at least half an hour while they were working on her, plus the time to send her to the funeral home, and like this whole time everybody thinks she's passed away. And the funeral home people are like, no, she's alive. So the family comes and picks her up. Happy ending, she's okay, she's still alive. The reason I'm doing a video on this is because, yes, I couldn't help noticing that this was like national headline news. Besides the coronavirus stuff, which, wow, it's really 24/7. Like I said, I don't have cable, so I didn't notice before. But it seems like that's the big story. Like, people aren't tired of hearing about every detail of that all day long? I guess not. But for some reason, this also was like a big story. And I read a lot of different papers. I look at a lot of local papers from all over America. And I like to look at the New York Post. And this is the kind of article that I can imagine seeing on the New York Post. This is the kind of article that the type of article that I come across all the time on local papers. Weird, freaky things like this happening. And usually they don't become headline news across the whole country in America. And this, of course, Canadians are listening to this too. So I was wondering, this is really weird. I heard it a couple times and I heard it again. And the next day they were still talking about it like 24/7. And I started to get this weird feeling like that's not just a coincidence. They want you to focus on this story for some reason. I think, well, I have a theory about what that reason is. But I also want to tell you that actually people being declared dead and then turning out that they weren't dead, it's not like it never happens. I actually have a whole book about the subject here. The stuff was kind of up my alley. I mean, you guys know I love all the forensic stuff. I love all the scientific stuff, all the freaky stuff, borderline paranormal. So Buried Alive is a whole book about stories about people who were thought to be dead and then turned out they weren't. There's actually like a really long history, because back in the old days it was hard to tell. Now that they have all these machines, you'd think that it would be easier, but in some cases it's not. There's actually this one condition called cataplexy, and there was a woman who had been the subject of like a mini documentary because she had had several cataplectic attacks where she ended up in the morgue and then came out of it. So she was dead and then came back to life, but the reality was she had never been dead. But it happened so many times that she was afraid that she was going to end up buried alive because the doctors couldn't tell if she was alive or dead. Yeah, you ever seen Serpent in the Rainbow? Remember that tetrodotoxin? It slows your breathing and your heart rate. They actually use it during surgery, apparently. They use some of that pufferfish toxin during surgery. And yeah, remember how they blow it right in your face, so scary, and then you get this like state where you're paralyzed, your heart rate goes down. It's like, that's like cataplexy. That's what cataplexy looks like. So there's chemicals that can put you in that state, and some people just have this kind of condition naturally. So it can happen. But why so much attention on this story right now? And then I had this thought. I realized it's just another layer of fear. Because people are scared about COVID, not everyone, but a lot of people are. And what could be more terrifying when you're in the middle of a pandemic and you don't know if your number's gonna come up? You don't know if you're gonna get this virus, and maybe you'll be at home, maybe you won't make it, maybe the ambulance will come along and they'll say you're dead and you're not really dead, and you're gonna end up buried alive. Especially with, you remember how they were dealing with COVID in Italy in the beginning, where the burials were really fast. You couldn't, even the family could be, even in Montreal here, when they had a lot, it was like they would take the bodies and they would get rid of them really quickly. And they're very short time between pickup and burial. And I think this is something that really stokes people's fears. I mean, I don't mean to be super paranoid here and read stuff into things, but the way they kept repeating it, I was thinking, there can't be any good reason to repeat this story. This is a freaky, weird story, like many freaky, weird stories that happen all the time. Why is this getting so much attention? I don't think it's a coincidence. So it's like the media is, I mean, this isn't maybe a big revelation in news to you, but again, this is another proof that they're just like fanning the flames to make people so scared. People are scared enough, as far as I'm concerned, my opinion. People are scared enough. They're scared of a lot of things. They don't need to be scared on top of it that they're going to end up buried alive. Mind you, there is one way that you can really tell if someone's dead, and that's by the brain activity. When there's no more brain activity and there's no more signs, because sometimes even the heart rate and the breathing, like, it can go under the radar. But apparently the brain activity monitoring, it really tells you. So if you're super paranoid, you can like put it in your living will, please don't bury me unless you checked my brain activity. But in here there were some interesting stories. Back in the old days, it was really hard to tell, and because they had a lot of epidemics and they wanted to get rid of the bodies quickly before there was contagion, they did sometimes bury people alive accidentally. And people would be, okay, this is super creepy, and obviously I can't monetize this video, but whatever. You guys, thanks for your support on Patreon. And I'll leave you a link if you're interested in the Purifier Pouch, 15% off, no shipping and handling, which removes odors by eliminating viruses, bacteria, fungus, and mold. If you're interested, you can click the link below. That way you can get a great pouch, and that helps to support my channel also. But so yeah, back in the day, this happened quite a bit, and people had very like supernatural kind of beliefs. And they would hear people like screaming and scratching in their coffins, and they couldn't wrap their heads around the fact that, oh, maybe we made a mistake and they're not really dead. And there were actually doctors who wrote like books or pamphlets. In 1735, the German doctor Michael Rampt published an entire, quote, treatise concerning the screaming and chewing of corpses in their graves. Yeah, they pretty much thought that if something was still alive after it was dead, then it was like undead, it was supernatural. And then Europe went through this entire phase where they had these like these homes where they would put all the bodies, and they had tons of flowers, and there'd be strings attached to all their limbs and their digits in case they were alive and they moved. And then, you know, the term dead ringer, that came from, because they would put this bell that you could pull down into the coffin in case it turned out you were actually alive. There was a string, so you could ring that bell. So there was a really long history of people being afraid of being buried alive, and there was a history of this actually happening, but it's very rare now. There was a woman, I think it was in Germany, like in the 80s or something, and she died on her porch while heavily intoxicated with alcohol, and then actually wasn't dead and came back to life, but they didn't bury her. But it was like a close call. So now and then there have been some cases. There was a case of a little boy, it was somewhere in Latin America. He sat up in the middle of his funeral and asked for water, and then he died again. It must have been doubly hard for the parents. But anyhow, it's a strange thing. People being mistaken for dead, not being dead. It does happen now and then. Being buried alive now is extremely, extremely unlikely. But I think that this repeating of this article really stokes people's fears. So I thought I'd mention it to you. I found it interesting, and that's what I was looking at over the weekend. That was the news and my thoughts on it. So anyhow, I hope you guys are all doing well. Thanks again for your support on Patreon. I hope you liked this video. Give it a like, please, if you liked it. Thanks for joining me in the chat. And God bless you guys. Thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.